And you normally, when you see that word conduct, where's that leading you to?
Behavior.
Behavior. And behavior normally has to do with which market? Mm-mm. Market. Yes.
Banking.
Not banking.
Stocks.
Yeah, securities.
Stocks, right?
Securities. Securities have to do with conduct. Practices, banking. Of international firms. So who are you going to target?
I weighed 135 pounds.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Offshore banks.
Offshore banks.
Offshore banks.
Right there. The only way you can write this using another jurisdiction is if you are well versed in how that jurisdiction operates. Because remember, this program is offered all over the world. And you don't want to write about a jurisdiction that you're not familiar with. And so now to answer the question. You've done your research. They ask you, what is the impact? So to get the impact, how are you going to get the impact? That's the homework you did. That's your research. Now you need to say, what is the impact? No, it's not a compare and contrast. Remember now, you would have already,
Looking at the
in your,
regimes, I guess.
yeah, you would have already done your homework. You know what the act is. You know what they did prior to. So what is the impact? What has changed? What was the cost of the change? How did the regulatory landscape change in this jurisdiction after the passage of the legislation? That's what you're looking at, the impact. So the impact could be closure of firms, could be change in policies and procedures, could be change in legislation, could be a lot of people not doing business with the United States. They want that. And then you have to substantiate that, which means you have to go out and do more research. Because it can't come from your head. It has to come from facts. So you have to research it. Now, this question is only worth 10 points. You have 3,500 words and includes all your text, references, and bibliography. So that means that before you begin writing, you have to allot how many words are you going to give to this question. It's only worth 10 points. But that's why I was saying, when you say compare and contrast, you don't have time for that. It only asks you one thing, impact.
Unit 1 to 5, yes.
So as you go through each chapter, I notice she's already put a little notes here, but you'll notice each module refers to other sections as they go through the book. So as you go through each module, you pick up things. Now if you look at each page, there are references at the bottom. Please read them. Because they send you to other links where you can get information. Do not give back the examiners what's in the book. They don't want the same examples that are in the book. You will get no points for that. So you have to begin your research now. And you have to be able to find, I guess, either articles in the newspaper or interviews in the Investor or the Bahamas Handbook where people spoke about the impact of the passage of this legislation and how it affected this sector. Good? Next one. Evaluate the difficulties in defining who is a pet. What do you think that's about? That's the definition. That ain't what they ask you. What do they want? Another 10 point.
Deciding who
how would we classify who is it that, you know, for us is like close relatives, this and that, or persons who are in the limelight in a sense?
Hello?
There's so many other.
Hello?
I can't hear you at all.
Okay. I better get Junior. All right. Guess I have to stay here.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry about that. You could hear better if you put in headphones, but she'll stay closer to the computer so that she can hear you, so that you can hear her. Sorry.
Yeah, I haven't headphones.
Okay. Sorry about that.
So you missed the first question?
I missed everything.
Oh Lord. Okay.
I just think it's
Oh
a
yeah,
laptop.
so I guess when you all speak, so she'll be able to hear. We need mic.
Yeah.
We need a mic. All right. So let me find you a volunteer who will explain what the first question is about. Who wants to volunteer? Come on, up front, so she can hear you. Oh, we here to work.
So just go over.
Just sit here.
Okay. Hi. Okay, we were speaking about the U.S. The first question is the implementation of the U.S. Patriot Act and the effects of the practices on international firms. So the first step is to determine, to define what is the Patriot Act.
Why? The question, this research.
This research. So you first have to understand what is the Patriot Act. Why was it enacted and what is its purpose? Then you have to, oh.
Okay.
Okay, and then you have to look at the conduct of international firms, how they have changed to implement systems to accommodate the Patriot Act.
And then we
Okay, and then the next part, you have to look at the behavior, and conduct of practices prior to the Patriot Act. And a keynote in that is that behavior applies to securities. So you would target offshore banks. Yeah.
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas, of course. So that's what you're most familiar with. That's the jurisdiction you're in. And then now to answer the question in terms of what is the impact, you have to look at the cost of change, how the regulatory landscape changed, what has changed in the business, how businesses not decided not to do business with the U.S., have offshore banks closed, different aspects of that.
And the sources, remember?
And-
So you can look at the Bahamian investor.
Right, and look at in the Bahamian
Bahamas
Investor, Bahamas Handbook, to get interviews to see what people have said in terms of the change
Newspapers.
and newspapers, articles. And just a note, do not use the information listed in your textbook,
So, yes.
at least the examples listed. Go and do some research.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So on the board, I've started the word count. So appendices, they have restrictions on those. I want to put a table in, but they prefer if you don't use it. And then their text references. So for text references, I put 100 words. So that left us with 3,400. One question is 1,000 words right off the top. So that left you with 2,400. You have 3 10 points and 2 20 points. So let's start calculating.
Testing.
If I do the 20 points at 750, that would sound good? All right? Mathematically? Yeah? Okay. That's 1,000. I took that off automatically. Automatically. E. Can you see the board? So it's 2,500 to 3,500 words. I have here 100, which is for text references. So even if you don't have any text references, you'll still be within the range. $1,000, I mean 1,000 words is for E. 300 for each one of the 10s, and 750 for the 20-point questions. Yeah, 750 times 2.
You said 1,000 is for what?
Oh, yes, what you said?
The 1,000
Uh-huh.
is for,
Question E. Yes, automatic. Oh, that's why you were saying there was some more. Oh, okay.
and then the
That's my
10
guesstimate.
question-
If what's your question?
The 10-point questions is 300 and the 20 is 700?
750.
750?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay, all right. But I'm saying, this is my estimate of how many words you will use. Because you gotta balance it. You see, the instruction says, look at the points that are allotted. So when as you finish each question, do your word count. All right. So we started to discuss B. And I heard some of the issues. Now, the key word here, the two things. 3 things. 1, you gave me the definition. 2, you gave me some of the challenges / difficulties. What they're asking you to do is evaluate those. So how are you going to approach this question? Whether this is right or wrong is based upon whether you evaluate. Not a discussion. It's an evaluation. So here in the Bahamas, what are the difficulties in defining a pet?
percentages. For example, members of parliament and so on, or the persons on the board. So do we know who are exactly on government boards and so on?
Mm-hmm, it's published.
Time constraint.
What do you mean time?
Let's say you were happy or something from 1950 something, you were still alive, you would still be considered a pet, even if you haven't.
In this jurisdiction? So you can't do that. The question says, all questions can be answered in relation to a jurisdiction in which you are familiar.
In the Bahamas.
So you have to know how, one, a PEP is defined in the Bahamas. Two, how do we apply it by practice? Three, what is the international requirements for a PEP? And the way in which you answer this one depends on which market you're taking it from. Securities, banking, is it retail? Is it private wealth? Is it trust? Because depends on which one you choose, your difficulties come with defining that and meeting the international requirements. That's where there's difficulty. Because the jurisdiction you're dealing with can have this definition, the Bahamas can have this definition. That's one of the difficulties in an offshore market. Because in here, in the Bahamas, I can say she's a PEP based on our definition. And the client will tell you where they come from. They are not a PEP. And they're not prepared to give you the KYC or have the enhanced due diligence done because they are not a PEP. That's one of the major difficulties we have. We all understood that, right? No. He's scratching, that's why. You understand what I mean?
The last part you said.
Right. When you, okay, this is only 300 words. Yeah. You have to be concise and precise. So when you answer the question, you have to tell the examiner exactly from which angle you're taking your answer from. You can't leave it general. This is not a general market. Our market is in sectors. So you have to direct the examiner as to which sector and which market in that sector you're writing from. If you work in a credit union, then you have to use the credit union as your knowledge base. Retail banking, the same thing. Are you doing commercial or are you doing private wealth? Or are you doing retail? Because there are different difficulties, depends on which market you're in. If you're in the financial corporate service providers industry, then you have to go to that market. If you're in real estate, you go to that market. Legal, that market. You have to try and weave it in. Because remember now, these examiners are reading all day long. They know what's happening in each sector. And when they don't know, then they send the questions to the Bahamas.
Question is, so, given that a PEP is defined under legislation, wouldn't that have some impact on all sectors? All sectors are confined by legislation.
Yes, but remember what I just said. We have the legislation in the Bahamas, but our clients are from other jurisdictions.
So wouldn't it then be comparing it against whichever jurisdiction, say, well, this is the distinction?
No, we're not comparing. You're looking at what's the difficulty. If I come from a jurisdiction where I am not a PEP, but I come here and open an account here in the Bahamas, and you say I am a PEP, there is a difficulty. Because I'm not going to give you the information you asked for. Then you got a balance to do. What do I do? Because you can lose the client. Because if the client is bringing in $20 million, what are you going to do?
Bring the money in.
Because they're adamant they're not a PEP, and then they tell you, I've opened accounts in Dubai, I've opened accounts in London, I've incorporated companies in Delaware. No one has ever asked me for this. No one has ever said I'm a PEP. Why are you asking me this? I am not giving it to you. Yes.
So my question is, when you say go from the market, so if I looked at it from a retail perspective, in terms of saying that generally the persons that I'm getting into my retail section are Bahamians or not, maybe foreigners, but not caps.
Then you go back to the comment that someone
Plus
raised
it's
over
over
here,
here, okay.
that you really don't know. Based on the definition for close associates,
Right.
that's the difficulty you have.
Those, yes, because the homeless is because
Yes,
everybody
because
know
everybody is
know
family.
everybody. Right, and then how far do you go
That's the difficulty you have in retail.
in retail, okay,
Now we getting the idea?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so C, another 10-point. Examine the nature of a risk-based approach to money laundering and how to apply it. What do you think that's about? Silence. Oh, right, okay, right first. What
I didn't get that far.
What right in front of you?
Yeah, that's a question. That's a question I didn't read far enough to answer.
Well, many
At least
people
what I
didn't
heard
read
it.
far enough. You gotta get the wheels turning.
So,
Well, okay, a
the
risk-based
nature
approach
of risk.
is,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Go ahead.
from, a risk-based approach is looking at all the various types of risks that would affect the business, let's say it's a banking business, financial. You would evaluate all of the risks that you would be exposed to. And based on the regulations that we have in terms of money laundering and terrorist financing, you would have to apply that within your, can't quite find the word, but.
You only have 300 words, you know.
Okay. Cutting it down.
You done gone all around and come back. Who else wanna have a stab at it?
I think in looking at this, we have to first, I guess, identify the type of risk, whether it's gonna be a regulatory risk, public risk, and how, whatever AML legislations or guidelines we have, what she said, but how does it affect that particular risk? So let's say, for example, if an institution, if an offshore bank, for instance, does not have proper AML, I guess, policies in place, they may expose themselves to regulatory risk, or,
Gone way off.
that's not it.
You have to start by defining what's a risk-based approach, and then after you define what's a risk-based approach, you look at
They don't ask you for definition.
I would look at the approach.
What was your response to that?
They don't want a definition.
The part of this where it says examine the nature.
Different jurisdictions have different approaches. Again, you're writing from the Bahamas.
When you say risk-based approach,
Mm-hmm.
how to apply it, I'm thinking, based on where I come from, I'm thinking we're looking at,
I think that's what she can hear.
I'm looking at how aggressively you're going to apply these, I would say, laws that you put in place, especially with gaming.
Mm-hmm. You're from
Um,
gaming?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to word it.
Because I think everybody follows the same. First document you need, Central Bank AML guidelines. Haven't read it before? Read it. You know it by heart. This is one of your source documents as to what happens in the Bahamas. Securities Commission have their own AML legislation and guidelines.
Were you using that one too?
Depends which sector you're using it from. If you doing gaming,
'Cause
then you
that's
stick to
my
the central bank.
Okay.
If you're in securities and trading, you go to the Securities Commission.
Okay, that's
So when you read the AML guidelines, it tells you the regulators' approach to money laundering from a risk-based perspective. They've already done it for you. The hard part for you now is how to apply it. Because you're talking about taking that approach and how your organization puts it into effect. How do you apply it to what you do? Again, you go into a sector and a market. D, evaluate the significance of the recent work of FATF. We'll come back to that one. That's the talk for today. E, illustrate the main offenses of money laundering with reference to a jurisdiction of your choice. Within your explanation, you must establish how those money laundering offenses can be committed, the legislation that is applicable to establishing the offenses of money laundering, and the potential penalties for commission of the crime. But that one is a giveaway. You all should write and tell the cows come home. What's E about?
Laws in relation to money laundering, like anything having to do with stealing, fraud, anything of that sort, when you could.
Why are you all over the place? When you do this program in both sectors, what's the two words I said?
Concise.
And precise. Don't go all over. Too vague.
Wasn't
So
so?
would we use the
Too
poker
vague.
after this one?
Yes, you want poker. Poker. Focus. If you write vague like that, not saying that you were wrong now. I'm just trying to train your mind as to how you have to think. Even when you finish the program and move into this profession, you have to be precise, concise, on point. You can't be vague. Because if you vague, what's gonna happen?
You lose marks.
No, I said when you leave, when you finish the program, you go into the profession. Someone asks you a question. You can't give vague answers all out of space. You have to know exactly what you're saying, or know where to go to get it, to come back with the decision. This in this role in AML, and then when you do governance, this job is you have to be able to answer a question, wherever it's coming from. And that's why the program is long. Because it depends on which market you're in, you have to know the laws and the rules for each country you deal with. And when we go through chapter 1 and 2, then you begin to understand the depth of what you have to learn in order to carry this out as an actual career. It's not a play job. Because you could go to jail. Yes, you're about to say something.
Yeah. So you could just look at the penal code as you're going.
How you get into the penal code
It
now?
says with the explanation must establish how the money laundering offenses
Homework
can
for
be
you,
committed.
homework for you. Read poker.
Oh, Poco's, I thought you was just. Oh.
No, read
Say
poker. You must read poker. Proceeds of Crime Act.
You just said the full name.
Hold on now.
If you would said that-
Don't listen to this piece. Let me chastise it now. You're doing an international program. An international certification is behind your name. When you walk into this program, it is expected that you know certain things. So don't be embarrassed.
It's
I mean, other lectures will be easy on you, but I treat you the way it is when you leave this program.
See, but I know about the Procedure Crime Act. But
That's the one we want.
It didn't click in my mind. that
I
you were talking
wanted to
about- you said
click.
Poco.
I wanted to click. Click. You gotta be quick. I'm trying to train your mind to be quick. If you're on the job and someone asks you, you can't be going, oh, you're supposed to know all the tools that you need to do this job. So I need to do an aside view right now.
No, that's fine.
You sure?
Yeah, but
What tools you need?
What, to do the job?
Yeah.
probably a copy of all the relevant legislation.
See, you going again in this generalization. I don't want relevant. Tell me.
Oh, okay.
Tell
I
me.
can't tell you all right.
That's what I see. That's what I'm trying to gear your mind. So when you answer these questions, even after you leave with your piece of paper, if you go and you interview for a job, you know what it is that you're talking about. If I interviewed you right now and you said, I'm starting this program, you want to interview for an assistant, you come with relevant legislation, my mind in blank. X. You see what I'm saying? You're not even selling what you know.
Okay.
Got me? So give me the tools.
Phone call.
Okay. Next one.
Securities Commission guidelines.
Uh-huh.
Central bank guidelines.
Mm-hmm. That's you?
Yeah, for now.
So you need some more.
I know that there's with the Patriot. No, that's not relevant.
No, you don't need it. By the time you finish this course, you should have read them all, so you know where to find it. You understand what I mean? Like if you're introducing a new product, risk would do the assessment. Your job is, what are the AML and anti-terrorism and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction risk? So you should have already read all of the documents from the FATF to know which one you need to pull out to use as your source document. I see somebody yawning. You have many nights be sleepless. If you wanna come out with a distinction, it goes very fast. Why are you saying distinction? There are a lot of people. Total, I think we have over 60 people for this sitting. Each year, that's the amount we have. So it's only the best that will get the job. Think about it. It's only the top. And in most compliance on departments, there's only 2 to 3 people. So you have to be sharp.
Yeah. What do you need to get a distinction?
Yes, you have to know POCA. And the FTRA. And the FTRR. And the FTRW.
Okay.
You have to know that.
No, but I guess Hassan wasn't. Like,
The top marks, the highest mark there is.
so 7 is it 7 point?
7 is not easy. Failure is high.
Okay.
Okay. And don't write no Bohemianese. English.
Okay.
Punctuation, spelling, all of that. F, analyze the nature and extent of the powers of the OFAC regime that has given rise to the substantial fines imposed, and comment on the size of the fines and the likely impact they will have on the conduct of organizations. Oh, that's a good question. How would you approach this one? You notice some of the questions are general, and then some are right. So what's F about? Before you know what OFAC is. Second, that's the homework. Know what OFAC is, and what's the second part? The fines, historically. So in the book they gave you, I think, 8 or so, but there are much more.
You can repeat that, please?
The first thing is you have to know what is OFAC, the regime. And notice they use the word regime. So they want all arms and all legs of OFAC. All. Because they have different. When you go to the OFAC site, they have sanctioned countries, and then they have sanctioned individuals, and they have sanctioned entities. And then what the US does, then it gives licenses if you want to do business in those countries or in those sanctioned activities of those countries. Then there are penalties. They penalize banks, and they can actually penalize countries if you do business with another country that they say you shouldn't do business with. But the focus here is on the substantial fines to the banks. They say comment on the size, so when you comment on the size, what do you think they're looking for? They don't want you to say bank A paid 20 million and bank C paid 100 million. That's not what they're looking for.
I want you to put it in perspective, I guess, according to the amount of the transaction or
The
value of the
deficiencies.
relationship.
They were looking for the deficiencies that were identified. What was the difference between the deficiencies for the 10 million versus the 100 million? And then the last part is the likely impact they will have on the conduct of organizations. So what policies and procedures firms have put in order to avoid receiving penalties from OFAC?
Say that again?
What policies and procedures banks or securities or brokerage firms have put in place in order to avoid being penalized by the US under OFAC? So now let's go to D, the topic of today. When you go home, you should be able to write this. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 defines what is money laundering and terrorism financing. So in a nutshell, what is it? I am not picking, I'm helping you.
Money laundering, you said compliance and terrorism financing?
I said, what is money laundering?
Oh,
And then
money-
what is terrorism financing?
Money laundering is basically the way that criminal proceeds are then legitimized and reintroduced into society. And finance and terrorism would be well, they're not always linked together, but they sometimes are, but it's where people are using legitimate or illegitimate money to help finance terrorism.
Okay.
Like iron weapons, purchasing false identities, whatever, what else they may need to commit the terrorism acts or.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? And what is money laundering? Terrorism financing? No? Homework, right on the side, page 4. Just above 1.3. Remember now, you're not just doing this course just to pass the exam. If you want to go into this as a career or part career, you have to know more than what's in the book. So when I say homework, that means it's for your career. First, homework. You see where it says, while the types of terrorist group and related threats have changed over time? You see that? Then you need to go and find out all of the terrorist groups that are out there. Tell me why you need to know that.
So you can identify practice, whatever failure, and you can identify if you see anything that comes up.
And this links you to the OFAC sanctions. the UN sanctions, the EU sanctions, the Canadian sanctions. Because each region has its own sanctions.
What page is this?
4. Page 4, the paragraph above 1.3. It says, while the types of terrorist group and related threats have changed over time,
Okay.
okay. Then the next one speaks about the differences between money laundering and terrorism financing. And I think he did it well. Because there is a difference between the two. And I don't want you to believe for 1 second that terrorism cannot happen here. Because it's a process. It could be just passing the money. But it's a part of the process. And everybody that's a part of the chain is affected at the end. It's not just the end, not the beginning. It's every step that they made in the way in finding the finance in order to carry out the act. So what constitutes an AML and CFT framework? And they have bullet point. How many? There's 2, 4, 6, 7. So when you read chapter 1, you read this in conjunction with POCA. And if you haven't done so, I need you to read the Bahamas National Risk Assessment. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. And then I want you to go to the CFATF website and read the Bahamas report and all of the deficiencies that the Bahamas has to address. So section 1.5 is critical to the Bahamas. Why is that? 1.5, why is that critical?
Access to being blacklisted.
Blacklisted in 2000, blacklisted again, still blacklisted. Because it says that once you're known as being a center for money laundering, and remember what I just said, your money laundering doesn't actually mean like in the past, the suitcases of money. Because we're an offshore center, in their minds, that's the only thing we could be doing, is money laundering. We're not producing anything, but we have money. We manage money. People in the offshore sector, the trust sector, security sector, they're paid very well. And that is what they look at. And so we have that reputation. And we can't get it off us. Because when you go to the FATF, and if you've done your homework and read chapter 2, they talk about countries that have deficiencies. And number 1 on the list is the Bahamas. And that's why it's so difficult for us to do business today, internationally. Because people see us as being not just a tax haven, but money launderers, and we also assist in terrorism. And then it says, how does money laundering affect society? 1.5.3, the social and political cost of money laundering. And you have this concept as you travel around the world, because people still think that's what we do. People still think that they can come here and bring money, not in cash no more, but wire it. People still think that our legislation is not on par with other countries, even though ours is stricter. They still think, mind-wise, that I could talk to him and he'll make it happen.
You know what the funny part is? They make it happen.
Yes. And so this is what they're saying. Because if you've already given that mindset and you've already passed through that, The mindset of the people says, guess what, they're the rules and the regulation, but I can make this happen. Slip by, it can go. So it's a mindset. And if you look now at other countries versus us, we have not addressed corruption as yet. And corruption is key. Because when they finish with us, with money laundering and tax evasion, they come at us for corruption.
They got a lot of work.
Because they're going all around the world, and I want you to be cognizant that we can afford to sit here and do nothing, but the international market will move. And when they move, that's it. You'll learn how to grow fish. Gotta get serious. 1.7, what underlying crimes constitute money laundering? And they speak here about predicate offenses. When you read poker, poker will tell you what are the predicate offenses in the Bahamas. And as you read chapter 1, I want you to notice, we don't set our own rules. They are set internationally. And if you don't comply, you get blacklisted. And we're still feeling the effect of blacklisting 19 years, or almost 20 years later. That image cannot go because those people are still alive. And all their children think the same way. You see what I'm saying? Because in this profession, this is like the legal profession, or like being a doctor. People don't walk out of this profession. They stay in it. So when those people sit around the table, they're in their 60s and their 70s, and they'll be in their 80s. They remember. If you look at the countries that are on that list of strategic deficiencies, none of them are close to us. None. What we have to do with Botswana, we're at the top as an offshore center. The top. And what do you think the key thing was? Why do you think we're at the top?
Because we're so close to the US?
No. There's a driving force when the international standards. You must have high political involvement. When they speak, you jump. So if you decide you can sit here and play around, you'll feel it. And we're feeling it. Hop on that plane and you speak mano a mano. Not send emails, not send the way it could be. I want to talk to the man who could make the decisions. We waited too late. Now we're trying to survive. How long, I don't know. 21 categories of offenses. Participation in organized criminal group and racketeering. This is where your research in this career comes in handy, because you have to know, to the bottom. You have to know, depending on the market you're in, you have to know the kinds of crimes that are committed in that jurisdiction or in the sector that they're involved in. So say if you have someone who's in marine boating, and they're coming from Nigeria, you have to know what's that industry in that country, what are the risks in that country. Understand? This is how this works. Terrorism, including terrorism financing, trafficking in humans being, and migrant smuggling. So we just had that incident 2 weeks ago. That's human smuggling. Did Captain die? Or did he ditch? But again, you see, this is an international crime, and if we don't do something, again, another pressure. Another pressure. Because that means that someone took between $3,000 and $5,000 per head and disappeared. And that means that money is right here, in the bank, already deposited.
Already buy a piece of land.
Whatever, bought a new car, went on a vacation. That's money laundering. And so as far as they're concerned, again, based upon what the CFBTF 70 came the last time, we are all asleep. Because it's happening right in front of your eyes and you don't see it. Sexual exploitation, including sexual exploitation of children. But we don't have much of that.
We don't have the children part.
No, we don't have the children part. You have the big part. What? Again, what I'm telling you, it is happening, but no one reports it. You don't see. Let me tell you what is yes. Let me tell you.
It may be getting reported, but that's when corruption comes in.
Well,
Corruption may be
but it's
stopping
all
it
a
from.
mindset. Realize in our community, we have a mix. The same thing you know, the embassy knows. The same thing you know, the next embassy knows. They know everything. That's why they can send out these advisories and say, don't come here, don't walk to Junkanoo Beach. They know. So you're only making it bad for yourself.
And our statistical reporting or lack thereof.
Statistical reporting is required internationally. It's the interpretation of the numbers. So we have one interpretation, and the international rules have another interpretation. So what goes out there says one thing, and when it gets here, it says something different. Illicit arms trafficking, I won't talk about that one. Illicit trafficking and narcotic drugs, because this just picking up one gun here and one gun here, they're not serious. And I'm telling you, these countries, they pick, each 5 to 10 years, they pick their next market. What we'll be working on next. You know what it is right now? Corruption, country by country. They didn't finish with tax evasion now. Laws in place. You finish with that. People closing their account every second, scared to go to jail. That's how they put the fear. And they're gonna do it just like that. So coming in the future, you won't be the leader, and you know you're corrupt, be prepared. They do 2 things. Either people move you, or they move you.
The last election showed us, gave us some.
Corruption and bribery, fraud. Now, the rate of fraud is increasing in the Bahamas.
Yes.
And before, when it was fraud, you go to jail, you go to court, and then they just let you walk away. Now, under poker, ain't gonna happen.
Going to jail.
You're going to jail.
But enforcement, though, the legislation in place, that's all well, fine. You have to have the political will to enforce
They're doing
it.
it. They're doing it now. They're doing it now.
That was one of our deficiencies.
That's one of the deficiencies that was in the report.
Or that you have these things in place when you don't enforce it. So that's what.
No, what they did was, when it was fraud, they put it under the penal code as a crime. But now, when you steal, deposit the money, go on a cruise, do what? That's money laundering. Because you're going through the stages. So that's what the new act is. Put them all under, and so when you steal, take the people money now, and decide you're gonna pay this bill and do it, all that is money laundering. Counterfeiting currency. They used to have a bit of that, not much now. Notice this one, piracy of products. They're on Bay Street now. We have a problem.
Which one?
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Because they sell counterfeit
Buying alcohol.
perfume.
Yeah.
Balloons.
You have environmental crime. I won't call no name. Murder, grievously bodily injury, kidnapping, robbery or theft, and we had some of them already. Smuggling, you see that? So we just tighten up our laws to do with when you're bringing in stuff through customs. Because now you could go to jail, and get fined. Extortion, forgery, piracy, and insider trading and market manipulation. So these are all what they call predicate offenses. Acts that you can make money from and then pass it through the stages which is money laundering. But we don't need to go through all the stages. What's the threshold for cash transaction in Bahamas?
15,000?
15.
15,000, right?
Mm-hmm. 15,000. I want you to pay attention in the offshore jurisdiction when you write example. Look at integration, page 14, and they speak about loan agreement, sham transaction, gifts and inheritance, redemption of life policy, and purchases of real estate. You have a lot of that in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
This is how the offshore center works. So under loan, they say funds will be transferred from offshore to onshore accounts, controlled by the launderer and made to appear as if they are loan made by the offshore company. So what you find out today is you have an offshore company here that was incorporated in another offshore jurisdiction. The directors are from a company that offers that service in another or the same offshore jurisdiction, but the account is here. And then that the account that is here is now transferring money to onshore, whether it's the United States, London, Spain, or wherever it is. Trust me, it is stopped. Why? Because we're number one on the list. What they see, money laundering, even though it isn't. That's what we face every day. Sham transactions, payments made from offshore to onshore accounts, controlled by the launderer, and made to appear to be the proceeds of genuine transaction. So as far as they're concerned, anyone who has an account here, launderer, evader, whatever, any one of those negative tones, that's what they see. Because it's coming from an offshore jurisdiction. Gifts and inheritance, funds held in one jurisdiction on behalf of the launderer may be transferred to another jurisdiction and be reported to represent a gift or inheritance. And you know why they say that? In certain European countries, I can take my company and I can gift it to you. And they see that as money laundering. Even though that's the law in that jurisdiction, because the funds are offshore, to them it's money laundering. So if you look at it, the nature of what we do, as far as the onshore is concerned, it's just like a heaven for money laundering. And they're not differentiating between who's the good client and who's the bad client. They're just all bad. You have to convince them. Yeah, you have to convince them that this entity or this individual is legitimate. And their business is legitimate. And the transaction that they're doing is legitimate. And then there's life insurance. Anyone here in the insurance industry? No? Oh, okay. The launderer places funds with an insurance company and encashes the policy. But this is for an external insurance. You would with a local one.
Yeah, and general, we do general.
Oh, the general, okay. Purchases of real estate, and you know, when you travel the world, they're not, you see a lot of you see real estate companies, but you know what else you see? They have companies now with brochures in the mall, and they're selling yachts. They're selling yachts. Save a lot of money to just buy a yacht. Registered here in the Bahamas. And then you go down the road and sell it to your next friend. What happens? Money laundering. And then it says here under 3 on page 15 that you don't have to do all the 3 stages. So now let's look at the international context. See why you read before you come? I excuse you all today. Now remember I said that everything that we do that concerns money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, tax evasion, corruption, is all from international pressure. So what you have to do now is familiarize yourself with all of the international organizations, one, and two, all of the international conventions. You have plenty homework, eh? I'll tell you, if you start to read these things, when you write, the examiner will know that you know what you're talking about. Because you'll see your words will change. They won't be like general and weak. Because you can feel that the writer knows what they're talking about. When you have a lot of little wayward words and generalization, then not you on the borderline to fail. You have to show the examiner that you know this topic. And that's why it's concise and precise. So let's start. International context. The first one, and that's what your question is about, the FATF. It says evaluate the significance right? So it says evaluate the significance of the recent works. So when you read the chapter stops the point in time. It gives you 2:17, and it gives you a hint of what happened in 2:18. So if you're going to do recent works, you want what happened up to, I think the last thing on there is October 2018. So you're going to look at the recent works in 2018, and I want you to evaluate it and then evaluate the significance of it. Why did they do it? Why was it necessary? That work as an S? Work. And I think they've also been doing some updates on trends and improvements in various jurisdictions. They've given a lot of updates on that. Then they added this on, analyze how jurisdictions are encouraged to implement the recommendations. So these two go hand in hand. One You can't answer this question if you have not read the recommendations. Because whatever recent work points to a particular recommendation. Then here when they say analyze how jurisdictions, and they put an S on it. So you're not speaking about just the Bahamas. What approach would you use? Not just the Bahamas. What approach would you use?
Some of the other jurisdictions and what they do and what policies and portions of the recommendation that they do.
Do it regionally. Okay, you're gonna do it regionally because? Why?
Come under the same laws, regulations within that region.
Yes. The FATF, regional style bodies. So here, that's their job, is to encourage the jurisdictions in this region to follow that. So what's the job of the FATF? What do they do? What's the purpose?
Try to prevent or reduce terrorism,
One that.
the financing of terrorism,
One that.
to make sure that countries.
Tell them the page.
19.
Establish international standards and developing global policies to combat money laundering and finance.
Terrorism. In a nutshell, that's what they do. So they've gone on to their range of tasks. They identify and analyze money laundering, terrorism, and other threats to the financial system. They develop and refine the international standards for combating money laundering and financing of terrorism and proliferation of weapons. Assess and monitor its members through peer reviews, mutual evaluations, and follow-ups. Identifies and engage with high-risk, non-cooperative jurisdictions and those with strategic deficiencies in their national regimes. That's us. Promotes full and effective implementation of the FATF recommendation by all countries through the global network of the FATF style bodies, which is CFATF. Responds as necessary to significant new threats to the integrity of the financial system. Assists jurisdictions in implementing financial provisions of the United Nations Security Council resolution on non-proliferation, and assessing the degree of implementation and effectiveness of these measures. This one right here was one of the deficiencies that I identified in the Bahamas.
Which one?
This one right here. Assist jurisdiction in implementing financial provisions of the UN Security Council resolutions. You notice that the central bank is now sending out, I think, 3 so far, because they were doing it in the past, and then they just stopped. So every time there's a list that comes out from the United Nations, it's circulated. And you have to check your system to see if any of those persons are clients of yours or do business with them. It engages and consults with the private sector, civil society on matters relating to overall work of the FATF. And that's when they send out their consultative documents. There's a process. Whenever they bring out a document, it goes out for consultation. And you can provide comments. It undertakes any new tasks agreed by its members in the course of its activities and within the framework of its mandate. So it was never envisioned that the FATF would be around for a long time. But of course, money laundering is everybody's business. And then terrorism came up. And then tax evasion came up, and now corruption is up. And so it has gone on for quite a while.
It's not even turn the AC down on this road.
You're one of 24.
I mean, it don't have to go down a lot, but like the cold bothering my leg now. Because I didn't make it back last time because I was in a car accident. Now I'm staying in my tire.
Oh, okay.
So it's hurting and I want to lay.
Yeah, put over your legs. You do?
No, he can borrow the pen.
Yeah. You wanna borrow it? I'll still ask them to turn it up.
Just try. I can ask for today.
She can lend it to you.
I just wear like 2 pants next time I come to class.
I hear plenty talking now. When I hear there's no talking. Okay, all right. Okay, turn to page 24. It speaks about FATF style regional bodies. And you will see that each region has its own body that oversees the implementation of the recommendations. And that's why I said you're not the only ones who write in this exam. There are members from all over these regions who write the same exam. So, in addition, forget the question now, and let's look at what the FATF does. As a body. First thing they do is mutual evaluations. Ours is done by the CFATF because we're not a member. The member countries are listed on page 23. So they have mutual evaluations, and they're done either as an annual self-assessment, and then you have the on-site mutual evaluation. That's why I told you to go to the CFATF website and read the Bahamas' mutual evaluation and all of the follow-up reports that were done. And you'll get a better understanding when you approach a question from the Bahamas, because you know exactly what our deficiencies were and where we are now and what's our next step. Page 26 speaks about countries with strategic deficiencies. And like I said, Bahamas is number 1. Botswana, and it's Korea, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and there's Ethiopia, Ghana, Iran, Pakistan, Serbia, Sri Lanka, Syria, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, and Yemen. So,
We'll talk on this.
Well, it's an alphabetical order, but I want you to know that we're the only offshore jurisdiction that is there. Only one. Only one. Everybody else is carrying on business as usual. It's just us. So it's not a good place to be sitting in. And that's why you see there's a lot of efforts to have face-to-face meetings to get off this list. Because the longer you're on the list, the more the business is dying. Because everybody sees it as high risk jurisdiction with deficiencies, because it's posted there. And if you look at which country was it again? A month ago, that blacklisted us. In EU. The Netherlands. So the Netherlands is one of the EU countries. Each EU country has to develop its own policies to address tax evasion. So when each one of them have their meetings in Parliament, they look at their budget. If there is a deficit, then they're gonna look based upon what we send. When we send our reports from the competent authority, we look to see which market is the most likely market where their money is going. You have the depth of what it's all about now?
It's not necessary that we're doing illegal
No,
business,
no.
it's just that they want their money.
Yes, but we already have that reputation. And if you look, don't forget now, by international standard.
We're not the only jurisdiction in the region to have that reputation that we're number one.
Yeah.
So, it's, in my opinion, it's going to take, it really does, two countries going.
They want it from all over the world,
Yeah,
but
wherever it's
when you deal with international organizations, all of these that are in this chapter, right? You're gonna see a commonality amongst all of them. What you see?
Same countries?
They're the same countries. Okay. And so, they're the big boys. So when I call you, what should you do? Okay then. And so if you decide you want to keep playing out there in the dirt, and I tell you come inside the house, and you decide not to come, what do you think you're gonna do? You're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it.
So, what's signing up to this document?
Are you all ready? That's the question. Are you ready? That's the question. Everybody is talking about signing, but are you ready as a people? You have to be ready for change. That's the difference. The world is moving fast, and you have to get ready. Because if you look at this list, we are not a major player. You may think in your mind you are, but you're not. Oh, voice. Color of the skin, but no voice. Not happening. All right, 28. FATF best practice guidance and report. And you see, they've actually listed it for you. So you see what the reading you have to do? Okay. So one of the deficiencies that the Bahamas had is on page 29. We did not conduct a national risk assessment. We just did it. So how could you have legislation in place, a framework from 2000, and the country itself did not identify what is risk are? How does that work? You put laws in, but you have not told all the players in the financial market what exactly are the risks in the market. So we just did that.
That's the story of violence.
But there's a cost to that.
Yes.
The next one is the European Commission and Council. So if you're dealing in the European market, what they did for their AML framework is they issued directives. 1, 2, 3, 4. And each one replaces the other one. And so what they've done is, here, in money laundering, this is your Bible, the recommendations. That is the international framework for money laundering.
I can't see that part of the board.
Okay. Put it over here. I'll be moving all day. The recommendations. That's the framework. International framework. The EU has directives. That's how they implemented it. So if you're dealing with clients from the EU, that's the document you read. Because you have to compare what their framework says versus the Bahamas framework. And that's why I was saying you just can't pick any jurisdiction. Because if you don't work in that market and you don't work in that jurisdiction, then you're not gonna know the nuances between what they do and what the paper says. So they give you a long history. What does the IMF do? Yes. International Monetary Fund, what do they do? That's another body that you don't send email to.
You throwing shade. It's the previous administration.
No. I'm speaking generally like my friend. Who's the IMF? You all should know. I think stop giving me definitions.
But what do they do?
Yeah, what do they do?
Yeah.
Why are they important?
They sometimes bail countries out that are in,
Used to. Not anymore. Think of them. What do they do? Turkey and the Bahamas. They're always here. Yeah, they do assessments. What do they do? Yes, that's what they do.
What?
They come to assess the financial sector. They come to, you send them reports, but they come and they tell you they're not making enough money. Now, more decided to put your hand in the pocket, take it out. 15% back of your salary. Implement. That's what they do. So now with all of this money laundering going around, they decided, guess what? Since we are the gatekeeper for assessing the financial soundness of jurisdictions, and this is a factor that can affect the financial sector, they decided to go into doing AML reviews also. Because it affects the financial sector.
So who established the IMF as far as, like, things like Nelson Joint and everything, right?
You don't know who are the players in the world? You don't know, you know the 10 richest countries in the world?
Yeah,
That's them.
okay. So, I mean, it's like.
There's the G10 and there's the G20, and we're not in the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50.
So pretty much they just keep branding themselves and call it the IMF.
You don't do what they do, you do what they say.
Yeah, but it's like they have so many arms, it's the same people when you go back.
Yes.
It's the EU, it's the same as the IMF, it's all of them the same countries.
I always tell you, as a Bahamian, have map of the world or globe, and then you will see.
Who runs the world?
Yeah, and it ain't us. Hold on.
Hold on.
So what does the IMF do? Mm-hmm. And they do AML regime also. Then you have the United Nations. And under the United Nations, they have conventions. When the UN passes a resolution, it must be followed. And so in this section, we give you the history of some of the major conventions that were signed on page 39. The UN Convention Against Trafficking in Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances, they call that the Vienna Convention. Then you have the Pomero Convention, the UNCAC, and then the one for suppression of financing of terrorism. And when it comes to these resolutions, the nexus of our offshore business, which is confidentiality, is not an excuse. So even though we have that confidentiality in the legislation, when it comes to certain international conventions, they don't want to hear that. That we cannot give you this because this breaches our confidentiality.
For instance, with the responsibility of giving to your client versus what I would belong as they go, I think, but in a real life situation from your experience, how do you balance that? How do you kind of do a win-win situation?
It comes back to one of our deficiencies. We must have the knowledge and experience to suspect that there is money laundering. If you don't have the knowledge, then you wouldn't know. And that's one of our downfall, that Bahamians don't, it's in front of them and they don't see it. You have to know. You have to know whether, depends on, let's say if someone is moving money between Turkey and Syria, what are the risks that come to your mind? Weapons. Children. Women. You see what I'm saying? So that is when the resolution comes, so you look, do I have any clients in this jurisdiction? What business are they in? Based on that business, what kind of risk am I taking? So if he's in the carpet business, no, he's carpet for weapons. He moving weapons. If he say he sails around the world in his yacht, he trafficking people, can be trafficking weapons, heroin, opium, any one of those things. And that's how your mind has to be. Those are the things that come to your mind. So the confidentiality is out of the window. Because you suspect. Once you suspect, you fire. And with the new legislation, if you don't fire, fine, go to jail. Okay. The next one is the Basel Committee. And this deals with the banking and the securities sector. 43. And they've set out their own guidelines as to how the banks should actually put in a framework for account opening, customer due diligence. All of that is on their website. So when it comes to the legislation and our actual framework for AML, you go here as a country. This is for our AML, CFT, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction framework. And that's all the legislation. And the national risk assessment. Right?
Is that something we go to, or the national risk assessment?
Yeah, you need to read that. Here is where banks go for their guidance. So if a bank, as a regulator, wants to know what kind of guidance should they issue to do with account opening, they go here. So you need to read that one too. And the links are at the bottom of page 44. Now everybody knows them, who are they? As citizens, you should know these people. Who's OECD? Oh, Lord. Yes, those people. CRS. Tax evasion. It's a grouping of 30 of the world's richest nations, together producing 2/3 of the world's products and services. So, what percentage do you all produce?
Third world will produce.
Okay. So money laundering and harmful tax practices are two issues in which the OECD has taken a significant interest in recent years. So you see the focus? Money laundering, financial assessment, and money laundering. Money laundering, terrorism, weapons of mass destruction. They provide you guidance to assist with operating a bank or securities firm. Here, money laundering, tax evasion. Moving next into corruption and bribery. Who are these people? That's the FIUs. They have a very difficult job, you know that? Who said yes?
I don't work for them, but I understand they have a difficult job.
What do you think so?
Based on, seven presentations, they have to be on top of regulation. They have to ensure that for us in the financial sector, that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in terms of reporting. They have to make sure, sift through all of these reports that they will get from everybody to ensure that they're not missing anything in terms of what they need to proceed further. It's a lot.
Okay, so when the MLRO files a suspicious transaction report, I want you to go back to page 8 through 15. the stages of money laundering. In their mind, they have to figure out what stage is this in. After the stage, just like you as an MLRO, they have to know the market. Because you raise a suspicion, and when you write a report, it doesn't dictate, it says numbers, but it doesn't speak to what's in your mind as to why you raise that suspicion. So when that goes to them, they have to figure out, why is this suspicious? So it's an independent process. Because on the face of it, a lot of people complain, they say they come back and they say they see nothing, you can carry on if you want to, keep it, if you don't, then that's your business. You take the risk. Because they do not see money laundering. So when you see a transaction, you have to think about, is it money laundering? Is it terrorism? Is it moving weapons? What stage is it in? How would raise that suspicion? Because when you write it, the suspicion must come out in the writing. It's not a bunch of vague words. That's why I keep telling you, you can't be vague. When you write, your writing should tell them what the suspicion is. It leads them to what it should be. Whether you think it's human smuggling, weapons, drugs, the way you write it tells them what suspicion. If you just say, oh, this client used to deposit 20,000, now they deposited 100,000. What do I mean? Could have changed job? Could have got an inheritance? Could have sold a piece of property? You're not telling me anything. And so that's why you see they're faced with a problem. They say that we don't file sufficient SDR, nor do we prosecute enough. But if the foundation of it isn't solid, it won't happen. So you could send in, she could send in 50, she could send in 75, he could send in 150. But if they all say nothing, nothing happens. But the backlog will be a backlog because they're trying to find something in order to raise their statistics. But it can't happen if the source document doesn't state what is the suspicion. So I don't have any teeth behind my, and nothing, I just passing through papers. So that's why it's important for you all to know the various stages and to be able to identify what is the suspicion. And that brings you back to the next thing. And before you raise that suspicion, you have to know the client. Because if you raise a suspicion, even though you cannot tip them off, the point is that whoever's the person who contacts them to get more information or explanation. If it is not so, and they realize it's so, then you could be sued. You have to be very careful. You just can't go around just willy-nilly saying, oh no, that one? That's the captain of the boat. It's him. I hear somebody say he was the one on the boat. He deposited 4,000 last week and not 10,000. It's him. Know your facts. Transparency International. So in addition to looking at all of the three things I just spoke about, money laundering, financing of terrorism, looking for people who producing weapons of mass destruction. So y'all can't see the suspicion, you can't produce no weapons. So never look for that in the retail section at all. But the next thing is the corruption index. And I know you all just read in the papers for this year. What do people say? What did they say? It was in the papers. What did they say? What did they say in a nutshell? You're not taking it serious. Because measures should have already been put in place. Persons should have already been prosecuted for corruption. They're saying you're not taking it serious. So, I told you before, the people are walking around. They could see, they could hear, they know. So the next person that gets set up, that's what they do in other countries. They prosecute them elsewhere. The source for when you talk about corruption in most countries, that's what it is. So you
Taking up the time of their life trying to get
take that, and then he comes and he take that, they can set you up.
Yeah, I guess that.
They just ain't call your number yet. But when they ready, they call your number with that big deal that you're desperate to have, and you want to make that happen, and then you say, I take it, go on. Yes, they're coming. They're coming.
The whole FBI situation a few months back already shows that
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, they're watching. Just trying to find out. And you know, these people here, these ones right here, what did they say? They said it last year. What did they say? They said, you all are out there selling residencies. It must stop. Yeah. See? Because everybody knows. Come here, buy a home, you get a paper, that's a permanent residency. You come and go what you want with all the children behind you, and then you pull in your little yacht because everybody get a little slip. Things moving up and down. Ain't enough people on the sea to stop you. What do you think people think?
Bringing in merchandise for your shop.
Everything.
From your bride.
If you get stopped. Everybody don't get stopped. There's too much water. There's a lot of water. And I heard it depends on how the boat sails. You can just pass someone and they don't even see you. That's how that water is out there.
Not every gravy boat stops.
So this one here gives you the corruption index for countries around the world. So when you're doing business with an individual from a particular country, or you're sending money on behalf of that individual to another country, you gotta look at what is the corruption index? What are the AML deficiencies? Were they ever highlighted in any typology? You know what I mean by typology? Yes? Typology is a report on a certain industry or threat. So you have one on piracy. So you have to, that's what I'm saying, you have to read it, because you have to look at what's the corruption index. That means there's a problem in dealing with contracts with that country. Government officials getting kickbacks. Then you have to look at, huh? I just want you to see this is what you're up against. And that's why I started by saying you have to be well versed. You can't go into this career halfway.
And the corruption index it'll even affect the way we do our job.
There you go. And so when you look at what's that question? Go back to that question. C. You look at a risk-based approach. You already are a jurisdiction with strategic deficiencies. With international pressure from here. That's why you just change all of your legislation. Right? You have pressure here. This money disappeared. We don't know where it's gone. So now we're trying to fill a hole. It's deep. Deep, deep.
Can't find offshore accounts deep.
If we don't get it right, then y'all could be looking at 20 to 1, 30 to 1, 50 to 1. How about y'all make it mentally? This one here, when you look at these, the UN resolution, which has stiff penalties, your mind go on yachts within those boats, what are in all those slimline jets parked out there that come and go all day long. This is for the banks, to guide them. Here, they want their money back. And as far as they're concerned, looking on the list, looking at the amount of flights we've made to Europe, they still think their money is here illegally. They want it back. So more pressure will come after we report in July. Because if it ain't sufficient reporting and money, they coming back again. And remember what I told you here. Each one of the countries in the EU can pass their own policies. And so they'll squeeze it even more. Now in some jurisdictions, what they have done, they've said that you can have money offshore. We tax you heavily on what's onshore, and then we have a special rate for what you have offshore. But not all countries do that. So it depends on the countries. Because in certain jurisdictions, why they do that is because there's so much extortion and kidnapping. So in their country, when you file your tax return, you state that you only worth 5 million, but you worth 100 million. But they can't let the public know that, because people talk. Because she can go to her and she can say, you know how much you worth? Next thing you know, finger sent in the post, head cut off, toe cut off. So they allow them to do it.
That's why in Jamaica they collecting their winnings from lottery with emoji masks.
Yeah. Because you could end up being killed for money. This is where you report your suspicious transaction. And they have typologies too. If you go to their website, they can tell you various ways in which people laundered money in different sectors. And this is why you see money service business is high risk. High risk. Because it could be used not just for money laundering, but also for terrorism. And then this one here, corruption. Once you hire on this list, most of the people in, where's this place? Here, are not going to do business with you. So we have some work to do. Don't breathe hard. See opportunities to get a job, to make it right.
With the teams that we signed with these various countries, shouldn't that have relieved us from being blacklisted?
No.
Why?
Because based upon the products that we offer and the way in which the handbook is written, there are loopholes. And so you could have an account here, but based on the structure, I may not have to report you. So you wouldn't know that the money is here.
Okay. Do you think we also, many countries years back started doing amnesty programs for their citizens?
And a lot of people did not take advantage
to
of
bring fun. But do you also think the fact that Spain or Italy or whatever, some Italians started bringing loads of their money back, then they realized, oh, a lot is in the Bahamas. Let's attack the Bahamas concept.
Yeah.
You think that's where it also originated?
Yeah, because that's the amnesties.
Yeah.
And then you have some people deciding that I'm not living in Italy anymore. They went to another jurisdiction. Because right now we see a flux of foreigners coming to live here permanently. They're sending all their money. I don't live there no more. Period. And they said they're not going back.
Temporary, I see some brokerage firms opening up and they're based in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of these.
Yeah. But there are a lot of individuals who are coming to live here from all over the world. Because they say they just don't believe it, they work too hard for their money. You want 18%, I feel like giving you too. I work hard for this, and they say they just not. Some people just believe, I'm not going to do it. And so they're trying to find the right country where they can live and enjoy their money.
Older generations,
They pay.
They pay it, they take it back. Cause, you know, they're 70, they don't wanna go to jail, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Young generation.
They have a different mindset.
Yeah.
Because their mind is already, I have this business here, they're all over the world. Why am I giving that back to you? Because that's a different concept.
Yeah.
Because the older people were already in that mindset that you render the Caesar with the Caesars. So it's just automatic. People today, they're not for that. And so they're moving from country to country. So if your laws change, they move somewhere else. Because some people don't opt just to live on a boat. That's their home. So along with all of this corruption, the key to trying to, let me see how to say it. I won't say it's reduced. The key to all of this, and let's move on to something else internationally, is knowing this. That's the key. Yes. Beneficial ownership. This could stop all of this if you all would just tell us what she owns, what she owns, what she owns. Then we finish. That's all you have to do is tell me. How much is it worth? 10 million? Okay. Then look at the tax return. He said $500,000. You'll have to bring some of it back. And then start paying his taxes going forward. That's what they want. It's as simple as that. No. The next legislation would be passed. That y'all have too many nominees. Too many of these little things, all of these IBCs, people flying around with this little thing, incorporation, this is my company. And I don't know who is this BO? Who is this little company? They don't want to do business with this little sheet of paper. They don't want that. It's a problem. So it depends on the nature of your business. She could own 5 of these IBCs. You got 10. And they're from different jurisdictions. Look at you walking around. Oh, I'm doing business with you today. Use this one here. 1, 2, 3 company. And she goes, yeah, what we, okay, yeah, use this one over here. QLM company, like, seriously? No. That's what they want. No secrets. So that when money moves, everything moves above and not below. So, we've done this. Hopefully they agree. I don't know what we could do here. Because if we get rid of these, that's the sector gone. But they say there's a ray of light. Over here, this is my light. You know what that is?
No.
The new world.
Blockchain.
That's right, new world. Yes. That's the new world. But no matter what world you go into, whether or not you're using paper or you're using cards, the threats are still there. That's the key. And the same thing, you have all of these same things. You don't know who this is. The products and the services, they change because it's all electronic. So then again, I still say, we are promoting this, the companies are coming. And these companies coming with experts with vast technological background. Are we ready? Because the jobs are available. Are you ready?
Are you meaning literally in the Bahamas?
Yes, if you're ready.
No, I mean that you see that
Yeah,
promoted
it's here.
today a lot.
Uh-huh.
I've seen Deltec advertising for some position. I've seen
Deltec, and then you have other banks that are not actually doing it, but they have clients that do it. A lot of countries don't. Everybody's dabbling in it. So when something is new, that's the time to jump on board, make what you get, and cut the losses. But it happens in that country.
Thank you.
So I'm just saying, they are.
You see, that's what I'm saying. You got it right. You see, because look at how the world is changing. What are they telling you? What are they telling you? It's not for you. It's not for you.
the odd fish.
Yes. I always tell people, go back historically. It's not for you. You shouldn't be walking around here with suits. What do you know with financing? Really? Historically, how old are you? As a country, how old are you? Okay. How old are they? No, they're older than that. They know the history of money and how money moves. They know where it's going next. You're playing in a big market.
But the thing is, if this is the real hope, there's eventually or soon they're gonna create a body to regulate that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
But see, the difference is this. When we jumped on this wagon of banking, we developed it. Right? No one saw the change. These pressures were coming, you know. Again, we were asleep. That's what I'm telling you. This market is coming, you get on it. And you gotta be able to see when the change is coming. When the rules start coming out. When the threats start coming. When the risks start increasing. Okay, where do we go next? So here we are now with a dying industry. This one is about to start off. And again I ask, are you ready? '52 and '53 of the UN Convention on Corruption. And this is about being able to recognize corruption from a client who's coming from another jurisdiction. So if you're dealing with a PAC, or someone you assume is a PAC, then you have to know the laws of that country. So what is a PAC, and what are their laws for bribery and corruption? And of course, the United States like to find people on 54 and screen. All right? Have a great week. You have lots of homework to do. I'll see you all for chapter 3. Yes? Oh, you want me to tell you how to answer? Oh, no. I got you for all the rest. Figure this one out. Figure that one out.
Yeah.
Oh, so you like the compliance commission itself? So you're in the non-financial sector? Yeah, but that's what they call it. That's the non-financial. Yeah, that's why you write it. From that perspective. But you're still offshore. This jurisdiction is offshore. Every answer is from an offshore. You just not bring it from the banking perspective. And I'm about to divide it into different sectors. You have trust, retail, commercial, money transfer business, private trust business. So you're in that non-financial sector. No, but that's your sector. Yeah, because you're still operating in an offshore market. This is your all other ones now that they're focusing on. He has one ours, because that was one of the efficiencies.